I told you that I was going to set a hearing. So I don't know what your understanding is with just the process.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and a warm welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, away from the eclipse are questions surrounding the Kohberger trial. Should it be moved? Certainly what the defense wants. What is right for this case? What's your opinion on the right way to go to prosecute this case? And when we say right, we mean fair and reasonable. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind, I'll be doing a live stream analysis. We've just heard that the jury has been settled in the Chad Daybell trial, and opening statements will begin on Wednesday. And so for the next 2 days, we're going to be working our way through that. I think it's about 130-page affidavit. So if you're interested in my analysis, please follow me. If you're enjoying this analysis in this particular case, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button. Bear in mind, I actually visited Moscow, and some of the footage you're going to see in this video is from when I was there, boots on the ground, in person. So if you're really enjoying and appreciate my coverage, you can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So what is your position in terms of this particular case? I've got to say, I'm playing open cards. I'm on the side of the judge and the prosecutor in that I'd like to see the Kohberger case tried where it happened, in Moscow. Those are my own personal thoughts, my own personal feelings. It kind of just seems to make sense. If I'm honest though, and I have given it a little bit of thought, as I say, I have visited Moscow myself, and it's a pretty small place. It's hard to imagine such a small county being unaffected or untouched, or also uncontaminated essentially by the media coverage. So if we want to be neutral, if we want the right kind of jury, and look at how much effort was the prosecutors and defense counsel and the judge went through to get the right jury in the Chad Daybell case. You know, if we want a neutral, reliable jury, if we want a fair hearing in this case, isn't the answer to take it to Boise, the same courtroom that heard the Laurie Vallow case, right? And so that's really the same courtroom where the Chad Daybell case will be heard as well. Both those cases were moved from the original setting of their respective cases. Doesn't it make sense to move this case as well, right? It is a courtroom I've visited. It's certainly quite a large courtroom. It has overflow facilities. And I think in that sense, in terms of managing the media, I think it does make a lot more sense than the facilities in Moscow. Now, what do we make of the defense's survey here? If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'll put a link to Law and Crimes Analysis. It's just where the judge really criticized the attempt by the defense to basically survey the residents of Moscow. I think they sent out 400 surveys, or I think they made 400 phone calls, essentially asking very probing questions. And the prosecution found out about this. In fact, someone who was surveyed after they were called the police and reported some of the questions that were being asked. And that in a way seems to almost answer the question. Isn't there too much familiarity with this case in Moscow? Now again, what do you make of the defense's survey? Again, in the Law and Crime Analysis, it's about 17 minutes long. They do describe the various questions that were asked during the survey. How do I feel? On the one hand, I feel a simple question could have sufficed.
Hello.
How aware are you of the Kohberger case? A, very aware, B, somewhat aware, C, not very aware, D, completely unaware. Instead, the defense have asked incredibly probing questions in their survey, the sort of questions that in asking the question, it kind of informs you of certain aspects of the case. And so have they, by surveying 400 people, not shot themselves in the foot by basically contaminating their own prospective jury? Was that done accidentally or was that done coincidentally? I do feel a jury should be tested not so much based on what they already know, but based on their standards and their ability to remain neutral. I would say someone that is focused extremely heavily and obsessively on a case should be excluded. So someone who has obsessively followed YouTube channels and followed the media narrative, they should be excluded because they probably have made up their mind one way or another. How could you not do so? I'm also somewhat surprised that there hasn't been an effort to move the circus out of town anyway, simply to afford the students an additional layer of privacy and protection. That has kind of been my position and my sense of this case all along, which is that, on the one hand, 4 students have lost their lives and that injustice needs to be prosecuted. But on the other hand, you don't want to add insult to injury by ruining the university experience. I think it is ruined in a real way by having this cloud hanging constantly over the rest of the community. And I really do think that the killer in this case wanted to do exactly that. He was not having a good experience himself and he wanted to ruin it for everybody else. And I think part of the pursuit of justice in this case needs to be to avoid that outcome. So I am a little bit surprised that there wasn't an effort from both sides, from everybody, to move this crime circus out of town and give the students an opportunity to concentrate on their studies. If you consider the demolition of the funhouse, it would seem, to me at least, to be in the same spirit, the same thing of we want people to not be fixated on this case. We don't want reminders of this case. Well, in that same spirit, wouldn't you want to move the legal circus elsewhere as well? Now, I suppose another aspect is if that happens, if the case is moved to another county, well, wouldn't another trial judge oversee the case? And would that necessitate the hearing of many motions all over again? I don't really know what the answer is to that, but it would seem to me unavoidable in a certain sense that another judge would need to appraise himself of certain aspects and rule on them. I could also easily imagine that Judge really wants to hear this case in his court. I mean, who wouldn't? And doesn't want to let it go. You can imagine he spent so much time thinking about the case. He spent so much time dealing with the case that now that it comes to it, he would probably want to have the case play out in his courtroom. And so, you can imagine in that respect, he would want the trial to play out in his courtroom. The question is really, and that's understandable, but the question really is it legally the right way to go? Is it legally the fair way to go? And so I guess time will tell. Time will tell what will actually happen to this case. As I say, the Chad Bell case and Laurie Vallow cases both happened in different counties, which were moved to Ada County, and it was felt that that was a better place for a fair trial. Doesn't the same apply in this case? So I'm not going to take it further than that. I do want to remind you that I'm doing a live stream at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and there we will start wading through the affidavit. The Chad Bell trial has been much anticipated, and it starts on Wednesday with opening statements. I'll obviously also be covering that live on this channel, True Crime Rocket Science. So please join me in my coverage of it. As I say, I've actually spent time in that courtroom. I've seen the judge, the jury, I've seen Laurie Vallow on trial, and it's going to be very interesting to see how John Pryor tries to defend his client, perhaps in a different way to the way that Laurie Vallow was unsuccessfully tried to defend herself. So looks set to be quite an interesting case. So I hope to see you guys in the live stream later today. I'll put a link in the description. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.